From the lowest to the highest, from the furthest to the nearest, from the smallest of the smallest to the greatest of the greatest, yoga is about all of life, everything we do, all of existence. My name's James Boag. Welcome to the Whole Life Yoga Podcast. Today, I would like to speak about retreats, or the yoga retreats that I offer. I'm aware that there are many yoga retreats and they're not all the same. There are some things called yoga retreats where people often, they maybe gather in the morning and the afternoon to do some type of class that they call yoga. And that's typically maybe an asana class, maybe sometimes a relaxing session, maybe some meditation, some pranayama, things like this. My approach is much more integrated, I would say. It's more holistic. It's been the case for some time that when people hear that I teach yoga, often they have an idea of what I do that doesn't bear much resemblance to what I actually do. And what I actually do on a retreat has the greatest chance to be fully expressed and shared. So since I began teaching yoga about, 22 years ago, 23 years ago maybe, I'd already been teaching other things for several years. And I was very conscious that each teaching setting provided different opportunities. And so what I would share, how I would teach, how I would structure the time and the way that we would engage with the materials or the inquiry was always different depending on the context and the time. So for example, the way I would teach in a 1 hour, 90-minute or 2 hour yoga class, an asana class, was different from if it was a half-day workshop or a full-day workshop or a weekend intensive or a 3-4 day retreat. And that's going to be very different from how I'll work if we've got a whole week to work together. And that's different again from when I give longer courses that run over several weeks. And whether they are in person or online, in terms of those longer courses, that will also determine to some degree different elements that I might include in the way that we work. But when we do an immersive in-person retreat for a week or longer, then we really have this beautiful opportunity to live the teachings. So this episode is also going out in my latest newsletter. If you're not signed up for newsletter, please do. It's the place where you'll hear about all the public programs I'm sharing. And there'll be some interesting for me, developments this coming year. Currently I'm teaching an online course on the Bhagavad Gita, which you can still join. We just started this week. It'll go for another 11 weeks. And it's been so inspiring to start working with a group from so many different places and to really start to open up the very practical riches of this extraordinary text. And I'll be announcing other things in the coming newsletters, but in the newsletter that's going out with this episode of the podcast, I'm highlighting a retreat I'll be giving at an absolutely wonderful centre called Casa Cuadrau in the Aragonese Pyrenees in Spain. A retreat centre that I have been blessed to share, I think about 30 retreats over the years. I was there every year between 2012 and 2019. And then because of travel restrictions, 2020-21 and Brexit rules, and there's been various things that have made it difficult for me to go and work there again. But that's all taken care of now. I have a visa to be able to work in the EU again. So this year, I am thrilled to be returning to what I think is just such an extraordinarily beautiful place to experience a genuine yoga retreat. Casa Cuadrau is situated in this village called Vallo, in a valley, cradled by these gorgeous mountains, and it really offers the opportunity for retreat. There's no shops, there's no roads with loads of vehicles going by. This is a place where you can experience genuine peacefulness and very readily attune to a deeper natural rhythm. One thing that people have commented many times over the years is they're surprised how quickly they start waking up earlier than they might do at home and sleeping earlier than they might do at home and feeling so much energy to do quite a lot of activity and yet feel rested. So one thing that sometimes happens on retreats, I've noticed this myself and I've heard it from many people, they go on a retreat and they need to go on another retreat to kind of recover. I've been, for example, on some meditation retreats where the retreat ends so abruptly that it's almost a shock to go back into daily life. And then that is jarring, and then it takes time to adjust. And then there are other types of retreat where it's just so intense that then you go home and you need to recover. At Casa Cuadrau, it's not like that. At Casa Cuadrau, you can have a deeply nourishing experience. And one thing that people have commented to me many times over the years, they've said, I'm amazed. We did so much, but I feel so rested. I feel I have more energy now than when I came, even though we've done quite a lot of physical things. So on a retreat at Casa Cuadrau, we will go outside every day. We will walk in nature. And one thing that people find, yes, it's exercise to go on a meditative hike. But one thing that I will share, we will practice being walked rather than walking, rather than aggressively trying to conquer the mountain. We will allow the mountain to call to us. We will collaborate with the mountain. We will collaborate with the trail. And we will experience being walked, walking with the intelligence and the vitality of life and nature. This might sound rather abstract, but the way we do it is super down to earth. It's super simple. But we can walk in this very nourishing way. And what I've experienced myself and with many people over the years, so we go for a long hike, and at the end of the hike, some people might be cartwheeling or jumping or running because they feel so much energy from being in this wonderfully prana-rich environment. Casa Cuadrau is just adjacent to the Añisclo Cañon, the Ordesa and Monte Perdido National Park. I think that's how it's officially known. And the Añisclo Cañon is an absolute wonderland. And we can be in there walking from the house in about an hour's time. And the canyon was formed when the Eurasian and African plates collided a long, long time ago. And so in this relatively short few kilometers of the canyon, you have so many extraordinary and sometimes species that are unique to this place. It's so beautiful. And walking by that river is just so vitalizing, so tonifying. And when we walk by the river, we see so many of the teachings of yoga there, present in front of us. It's like nature as the guru is so present. We can see the principles that yoga encourages us to adopt and cultivate in our own lives, demonstrated by the trees, by the river, by the plants and the animals that live in this extraordinarily beautiful and nourishing environment. So one thing that I also notice about the setting of Casa Cuadrau, with these gorgeous mountains, some mountains are kind of domineering, yeah? And there are some mountain settings where it can be so cold overnight, and then once the sun comes over the peaks at a certain time of day, it'll get warm. Casa Cuadrau is a pretty open valley, and there are these truly majestic mountains. The Cestrales mountain range, for example, is very easily visible from the house, and you can see Monte Perdido, or the range that Monte Perdido is part of, from the house. But these mountains, especially the Cestrales, which is closer, it's like they cradle us. So it's like we're held in this beautiful environment. And every direction that one walks from the house, you can go down to the next village, Buerba, and there's a beautiful river down there. You can go up to this mythical mountain called, in the traditional local name, Brahmapan, which if we take it as a Sanskrit word, it means fallen from the creator. And then we can walk into the canyon. There are short walks that we can do from the house, taking us into beautiful scenery. So every day we will be actively, in an easeful, natural way, connecting to this rich support of this beautiful environment. And another interesting thing about the environment at Casa Cuadrau, just a century ago, people were still living in this village. It was still an active village. People would cut down the black pine trees and take them all the way down the river to the coast, to Barcelona, for example, and sell the pine wood, which was prized for being used in shipbuilding, for example, and the boxus wood, which was, there's two types of wood that they would use to make furniture, to make boats. And the men of the village would go down, they would sell wood, They would buy salt, they would buy olive oil, and they would go back up to the village. You can still see the terraces, the historic terraces that people used to grow the wheat and to grow the vegetables. And at the same time, you can see where some sections of the mountains were deforested. The trees were cut down. But what's been happening in recent years, because people left, the Industrial Revolution came somewhat late to this part of Europe, but for some decades now, fewer and fewer people have been resident in this village, which makes it super peaceful, but you can also see the resilience and the power of life and nature. And we can see traces of how humans can actually collaborate with nature very skillfully and respectfully. So on so many levels, the environment is so nourishing and so inspiring. And the house itself, Casa Cuadrau, that's the historic name of the ruin that Danny, who had the vision for this place, first, he bought it when it was called Casa Cuadrau, and he kept the name. It's kind of ironic because it means the square house. But at Casa Cuadrau we learn how to see and think beyond the boxes that maybe we've previously confined ourselves in. And the house itself is also so beautiful, made largely with local and natural materials. The Schala is so beautiful, full of light, beautiful views of the mountains, gorgeous wooden surface, things to hang on, plenty of space to do all sorts of work with music and movement and ceremony and dance. There's a beautiful garden. We can do the Agnihotra fire ceremony outside. We can do Kirtan outside or in the Schala. And it's just a wonderful space to practice and explore together. Again, there's this feeling of being very held and supported, cradled. And what I've also experienced all the years that I worked at Casa Cuadrau, the people that go and work at Casa Cuadrau come with such dedication, such devotion, such generosity. Danny and his wife Katya, who created the project, who nurtured it over all these years, they do so with such generosity, and that's been reciprocated as well, I feel, by so many of the amazing team members who've helped build the centre over the years. Lovely, fresh, primarily local and organic food, but high quality, freshly made food every day, prepared with love and care. And I think the thing that makes it so unique in my experience, or so special at other places like this, of course, is the chance to really be on retreat, to really leave the normal day-to-day affairs behind. So if you join the retreat, I dare you to do the full digital detox for the week, if that's feasible for you. You know, some people might want to be calling family members and such, but that's also an amazing opportunity that's available to just be completely offline for a week, and really notice how soothing that can be for the nervous system. The other thing I would say about Casa Cuadrau is that, like all the best places, it takes a little bit of effort to get there. It's not like you can just hop in 1 hour from Barcelona or Zaragoza. It takes a little bit of effort to get there, but it's worth it. So I hope to see you there. What we'll be doing this summer, I'll be working with Danny. So my friend Danny, I met Danny in 2011, I guess it must have been. So I met Danny in Mysore, and he started coming to the kirtans I was sharing and a Bhagavad Gita course that I offered. And Danny stayed deeper into the season, and he also went to Tiruvannamalai. And when he returned from Tiruvannamalai, he stayed in my place for about a week, I think. And during that time, Felipe, another friend from Colombia, the three of us were there. It was kind of late. It's kind of the end of the regular yoga student season. I was going to be staying longer doing my Sanskrit studies, but these two friends were still there. We did quite a lot of stuff together. And one day, we make some food at my place, and Felipe's over, and Danny said, I want to show you guys my project. So he brings his laptop out and shows us his design and some of the photographs of the work that's already begun to renovate this ruin. and create this retreat center. And Danny explained to me how in all his previous years studying yoga and dance and performing arts, because he was a technical architect and he'd worked a lot in theatre and outdoor theatrical events. So he's met many great teachers in the realms of yoga, movement, dance, mime, the theatrical arts more broadly. And many of these weekend intensives that Danny had joined, at the end, when there would be a questionnaire, he found himself giving the same feedback so many times. The workshop was wonderful, but it was too short. I feel like I really want to live alongside the teacher for a week or a month so I can really understand how to weave this practical wisdom that they obviously embody more into the fabric of my own life. How can I really make these practices so they just fit into my own life in a very supportive way? And then at a certain point, Danny inherited a flat in a city from his grandfather, and he didn't want to live in the city. He'd always been a mountain man, loved the mountains, and he'd had this desire to create a place where those longer programs could happen. And rather than just a weekend, people would come together for a longer period. Now, the first year that Casa Cuadrau was open for yoga retreats, there were 2 or 3 summers where they were doing work retreats to build the house. And then the first year that there were yoga retreats, I was invited. And there was still no hot water that very first time. The house was still just being completed in its first iteration. There is hot water now. It's a very, very comfortable place to stay, actually. Very beautiful as well. But that very first time, it was still kind of still finishing. And the first couple of years, the Charlotte was slightly smaller. Now it's different. And there was a restaurant, I think, the second year to try and generate more funds. And I remember interesting times when sometimes I'd be teaching and they'd be washing up, and sometimes being the waiter to people from different nationalities at lunchtime. It was super fun. But that was just in the very initial years, more than a decade ago. But Danny had this desire, let's make a place where people can do deeper work. And then after the first year, he realized, yeah, James, I realized if I tried to run 1 month long retreats, I would be bankrupt in 1 year because so few people have the opportunity to come for that long. But 1 week retreats are viable. So that's what we'll focus on for now. And before the restrictions in 2020 and all that, so 2019, the last program I gave there, I did a 1 week retreat and then I gave a 10-day program on the Yoga Sutra. But I'm returning now to do a 1 week retreat on yoga and the sun at the time of the summer solstice, which is a time I've had the great fortune to be at Casa Cuadrau, I don't know how many times, but several times over the years. And it's one of my favorite times of year to be there. Casa Cuadrau is extraordinarily beautiful at any time of the year. I've been there most months of the year. I don't think I've been there in December, January, February, or October. But I've been there most of the other times of the year, and sometimes several times. June is especially beautiful because in July and August is the high season for holiday in Spain. And so even though it's still peaceful, it's not like it is in June, when you can go out on this extraordinary hike surrounded by jaw-dropping beauty and this majesty of nature, and maybe hardly see anybody else all day long, and it's so peaceful, and all the sounds of nature, and there's still all of the colour of the spring flowers or the early summer flowers in June there in the mountains, and the weather is usually gorgeous. So it's a magical time, and of course it's at the solstice, so it's a wonderful moment to celebrate the sun as this great symbol of life. And so on this retreat, as well as daily movement and meditation and plenty of singing, and of course being outside and walking in the gorgeous surrounds of nature, we will also study yoga and the elements. So one of the things I find so beautiful about the Indic tradition, whether it's the most orthodox Vedic part of it or it's the, let's say, wilder tantric side of things, which more overtly works with the forces of nature, even in the most orthodox priestly Vedic lineages. And what's the very first word in the Rigveda. It's Agni, fire. It's all about how to connect with the forces of life, the constituents of nature, earth, water, fire, air, and space, the different aspects of life. How can we be in relationship with them in a way that's nourishing for us, for them, for the whole of life? So on this week, this is what we'll give our special focus on. How can we restore, rehabilitate, cultivate a more skillful, nourishing, and sustainably joyful relationship with life itself, with the elements within and around us? I know of no better setting to do this. I'd love to see you there. Booking is open. You pay a deposit to Casa Cuadrau, a teaching fee to me, and then the balance you pay at the retreat itself. So grateful to be returning to this magnificent retreat centre and working with Danny and Katya and their team again. And be wonderful to see you there.